Hi, my name is Christian Thalacker, and I am raising $1,969 for children who need art supplies and art teachers. And I'm raising money for gifted artists who need low-cost workspace and gallery space and events to find patrons like you. Given that it's a Giving Tuesday season, and this is a season when everybody's raising money for nonprofits, I'm going to combine a few loves of mine into one experience. It's climate reality. It's Al Gore's famous nonprofit that raises awareness for the need for climate science and action. So Beverly Pepper, the artist that the Art and Architecture program, you, the taxpayer, commissioned to beautify San Diego with her massive public sculpture, Excalibur, back in August 1976. She is famous for raising questions and dialogue about people, the environment, civic engagement. She lives in Todi, Italy, a gorgeous part of the world, and she's still active. So I'm going to combine climate science, climate reality, beautiful art, beautiful San Diego, and my father's book, because he was the first director of the Art and Architecture program. That here it is. He wrote it. You can see his name, Donald W. Thalacker, and his dear friend. Both have passed away. That was Sam Hunter, art historian, professor at Princeton. But I'm going to be reading the chapter about Beverly Pepper. And I'm going to keep reading chapters until $1,969 have been raised. Woohoo! And a big shout out to everybody in Kentucky. I love Ale1 ginger ale, my one sinful pleasure. So on with the show. If you have any questions, it's a YouTube live video broadcast. Message me, and I will answer. I may take a little time out to answer, or I'll give you a shout out. If I don't text it, I'll say thank you. All right, here we go. So I'll start by showing you a picture of Beverly Pepper back in 76. That's her. And here is 2 of the 4 pages I'll be reading from. And that's her massive sculpture here. Sorry, that's the maquette here. And on this side, that's the actual sculpture. And this chapter is illuminating for the simple reason that Beverly Pepper is a present soul, that she transforms you. She transforms me. She transforms hard-boiled people into making inspired choices. So as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, Beverly Pepper, if you're watching, I wish you were president. But I'm glad you're the teacher of our children. I'm glad that you're the teacher of people in San Diego. We need more people like you. We need our children to be like you. Present and wise. Lots of questions, ready with a joke. One that makes you laugh, which I'll get to now. Beverly Pepper has a way with people, even judges. When the principal judge in the new San Diego courthouse discovered that Pepper had been selected for the exterior sculpture commission, he requested that she meet with him at her earliest convenience. Before she started on her design proposal, he wanted her to know that he had no use for any of those abstract things. Lively and charming, she put the judge at ease and reassured him that she knew just what he meant. In fact, says Pepper, recalling with amusement the story she told him, a painting of Custer's Last Stand had recently been commissioned. And when it was unveiled before the crowd, the horrified patron saw a scene of copulating Indians on a sea of mackerel with halos. The patron exclaimed that this wasn't what she'd wanted and asked what in the world it had to do with Custer's Last Stand. To which the artist responded, Custer's final words as he went into battle were, "Holy mackerel, look at all of those fucking Indians." With that, the judge cracked up and never uttered another word about not wanting an abstract sculpture. Beverly Pepper was nominated for the San Diego Commission in September 1973. At the time, she was living in Italy, and nearly a year passed before the contract was negotiated. Everyone was pleased when she decided to accept it, especially when she was featured in Time magazine 9 months later. On June 16th, 1975, a red-hot mama returns. The article reads, Pepper is one of the most serious and disciplined American artists of her generation, wrote Robert Hughes. And this testimonial helped quiet mounting criticism within the agency that the $96,000 commission was excessive. By February 1975, Pepper was ready to present her concept. She had taken her work seriously indeed, constructing not only a steel maquette of the piece, but a model of the building facades as well. After thorough study, she had decided that the originally proposed site, a relatively small lawn directly in front of the courthouse, was too restrictive for a building consisting of strong perpendiculars and sloping laterals formed by a series of vertical and horizontal pink stone-like beams that create a visual pattern of a huge, elegant grate. From her point of view, the problem was how to deal with this immense web background that is inevitably in strong competition with whatever is placed next to it. Her solution was to close off the street between the courthouse and the nearby federal building, which are situated at right angles to each other and linked by an enclosed pedestrian overpass. This would change the environment by creating a brick plaza, Pepper concluded, allowing for a pedestrian walkthrough devoid of cars and the possibility of a dialogue between the site and the people. Most important, the space would accommodate a sculpture commensurate in size to the monumentality of the buildings. The architects, Frank Hope and Associates, Richard George Wheeler and Associates, and GSA agreed to the proposal. There were miles of red tape involved in this decision, and it took time to cut through it. But by December 1975, the piece was complete. Julie Brown of the GSA staff inspected the sculpture in Pepper's studio, and it was approved. Awaiting it on the West Coast was Peter Wittmer, GSA architect and project supervisor for the sculpture, who kept Pepper informed of each new development and served as a valuable liaison between the artist, the GSA headquarters staff, and the GSA office in San Francisco. So I'm just going to read from the two text blocks that are in the book. The first text block is next to the maquette, which is fantastically rendered by Beverly Pepper, complete with trees, with people, and the buildings that she sent for approval to my father's office at the General Services Administration back in February 1975. So I'll just read it to you here. It says, Beverly Pepper's maquette for Excalibur, an exterior sculpture for the plaza of the Federal Building in San Diego. Pepper not only designed a sculpture, but also proposed an entirely new site after concluding that the original location was too restrictive. She constructed the maquette of steel and set it against a model of the building facades to show how the piece would function in the new site. What I sought in designing Excalibur, she said, was to interrelate the work with the lives of the people while remaining within the context of the given architecture. She goes on to write here in the next block of pictures. This is on this side here, when the Excalibur, her public sculpture, is in place. Pepper's concept for Excalibur arose from a careful consideration of how the sculpture would interact with the human and architectural environment. She decided to use solid elements because they serve, in her words, to detach the work from its background. Excalibur stretches out and fills the space, doing so in proportion to the building's scale, and thereby inviting the observer into the interior of the plaza. Pepper also took into account possible observation points. The sculpture was to be seen from various levels. Besides the direct plaza view, there are overhead windows and balconies, as well as cars passing on adjacent streets. All this required a work which has sufficient strength and power to endure and attract from multiple angles and elevations, drawing people into the plaza. Let's continue on the second page, where here you can see the workmen installing Excalibur during the summer of 1976, welded in sight, and there the finished work in front of the courthouse and Federal Plaza in San Diego. So I'll continue reading. Shipment of the piece was delayed while it was sandblasted again and its surface reworked according to the requirements of Pepper's revised painting procedure. By July 1976, it had arrived in San Diego, and installation began. Complications arose when the construction workers threatened to strike if Pepper didn't use union welders. Pepper reluctantly obliged, even though the government doesn't require union labor, and though her own workforce had been brought in for the installation. Excalibur, as the work was titled, caused an instant sensation once in place. Measuring 40 feet high by 32 feet deep by 60 feet wide, it is one of San Diego's major conversation pieces and has been the subject of countless articles in the local press. Richard Riley, art critic for the San Diego Union, advised readers to listen to Wagner at top volume before going to see Excalibur. As Wagner is to music, Pepper is to modern sculpture. Big, soaring, forceful, someone to be reckoned with. Not everybody shared Riley's enthusiasm, however. In a front-page feature story, the Evening Tribune's John Fabina interviewed sidewalk critics, most of whom confined themselves to guessing what Excalibur was. Hazarding a few similes of his own, Fabina continued. The multi-ton structure, which soars upward like a whale breaching the ocean, or a cornstalk straining for the sun, or a vessel under construction in a shipyard, has become a source of controversy. The best clue to the sculptor's identity, of course, is its name, Excalibur. In Arthurian legend, Excalibur was a sword that King Arthur was able to draw from a rock as a boy when no one else could. But another version of the legend is that Excalibur was given to King Arthur by the Lady of the Lake. So even here, there is controversy. However, there is agreement among legend makers that upon King Arthur's death, Sir Bedivere threw Excalibur into the lake, and a strange hand grasped it, brandished it 3 times, and disappeared. Excalibur was never seen again until it surfaced recently at the federal buildings. Beverly Pepper had her own, rather different views of Excalibur and its function. Monumental sculpture differs from the architecture around it. It shares, of course, many of the built-in problems of public safety, weight limits, extreme climate, hurricanes, earthquakes, even an accessibility for wheelchairs. Yet, it is directed to man and his perceptions, not bound to serve his earthly needs. There is no need to adapt to use this work. The only inescapable need is to create an interaction between man and the aesthetic experience, which here, in a public place, sharing an experience with others, becomes a social act. In this sense, the sculpture should invite the participation of the public. Not that it should affect friendliness or suggest easy invitation, but rather make possible a dialogue between the people and the site itself. The need to participate is more than physical. It is also to enter a shared space, consciousness. This was my goal in San Diego. Pepper succeeded beyond her greatest hopes. As the staff writer Gina Lubrano wrote in the San Diego Union on August 24th, 1977, Excalibur was crowned with a milk carton, but how it got there, nobody knows. Spider-Man, said some. Superwoman, said the livers. To some, the sculpture looks as if it is ready to be launched into space. Youngsters, however, use it to launch themselves on their skateboards. It was Elsie the cow who put the milk carton on the tip, suggested Assistant U.S. Attorney Howard Matloff. When pressed for an explanation, he said, she did it in retaliation. She was indicted last week for uttering a bad check. Beverly Pepper had approached the project with a sense of humor accompanying her serious purpose. The citizens of San Diego responded in kind, appreciating her work and enjoying themselves immensely in the process. So let me take a little sip of ginger ale. And I'll read the final text block. Two views of Excalibur. You can see here soaring vertically and then more lateral. Describing her intentions for the work, Pepper said, I wanted the soaring steel forms to energize and activate the plaza, not as a territorial space revealing the distance between individuals, but rather as one that allows them to move and experience a closeness, a relationship, not only with the work itself, but also with others and their own inner selves. What do you think when you hear this? I would love to hear from you. Tell me what you think. Say something. Either send me an email, cejpat@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter, Mr. Christian Cafe. That's my Twitter handle. Or leave a comment here in the YouTube section. If you can, please support the Lexington Art League with a donation, $5, $1, more if you can. Bless.